Nothing overly difficult. Challenges are overcoming old ways of thinking, I suppose you'd call it. There's some pretty resistant personalities within the organisation, and it's very hard. The biggest challenge, I suppose, is people like to measure safety, and it's not something that always can be measured easily. And to move people from showing that we're doing work, I suppose, into just doing it is the hardest thing. Yeah, it's within the organisation we do. I mean, initially it was there's a worry or concern, I suppose, that if they spoke out, they're going to be targeted or it'd be used against them in some way. And that took a little bit of just getting them to trust us, that what we're saying was actually going to happen, that they could speak freely, they were able to raise their concerns or ideas or whatever it happened to be. And that took a while. And we had a couple of learning teams, but once it happened and word got back and people talk as people do, and we struggled to get participants, people wanting to turn up. But now, when word goes out that we want to have a learning team on something, getting bodies along to participate, not anywhere near as difficult now. So I think that's a good sign. It just shows that people are trusting us and they see it's working. That we're starting to get feedback from the field now saying, you are listening to us, and they can see some of the things that they've suggested being put into place, and that's starting to get momentum now. The snowball's starting to build up speed, which is great. No, error's not normal, that's for sure. That's probably the key one to overcome. I mean, I see people get the system side of it. They get response matters. They get that side of it, but just the fact that I think, particularly in our industry, the oil and gas industry, it's very it can be egotistical. It can be testosterone filled, and people are usually right. And they're looking for someone to say, no, he made a mistake or she made a mistake or that's what went wrong, and nothing's ever that simple. And just to overcome that's probably the hardest one. But once they get that, everything else tends to fall into place really quickly. Yeah, I suppose one of the best examples we can give is not necessarily a learning team, but came from an incident or event that happened where unfortunately someone did get hurt. It wasn't a major injury, but the report was done and it came back as a very standard safety 1 type report where hadn't followed procedures need to be improved. Person should have done this or didn't do that. And we were reviewing the report, and I just happened to say it's a pity that the people who weren't here weren't around. And someone said, oh, they're actually in the room, in the office. So we grabbed them in and we brought them in and we actually sat down and had a chat. And it took a while to explain to them that just tell us what was happening. There is no right or wrong answer. There's nothing, you're not going to get in any trouble with what's going on. Of course, they initially defaulted to, I should have followed the procedure. And I said, no, let's find out why you didn't follow the procedure. Now, the upshot of it was there was significant 10, 15 contributing events that occurred that led to the person unfortunately being hurt. But the key to it was that at the end of it, everyone sitting around the table, which were some of the key decision makers in the business unit, we all agreed that we all would have done exactly the same thing in exactly the same situation. If we were in the same unfortunate situation at 2 o'clock in the morning, with the pressures that were on us, we would have done exactly the same thing. And that's been a big turning point for our business, where everyone said, well, oh, hang on, there is another way of looking at this. And it was just luck that the 2 or 3 key people were in the room at the time and managed to have a big impact in a very short time. No, for my business unit it wasn't. I can be honest, it'd be a different kettle of fish if I was talking to a different business unit. It'd be much, much more difficult. They've been exposed to it. Other different business units in our business have been exposed to it for equally long, and at this stage they're not getting the traction. And you do need that management buy-in. Without that, it's very, very difficult. But I've been very fortunate that our management's very much on side, looking for another way. No, next steps, just continue with our learning teams, just continue learning as much as we can and trying to come up with different solutions. The stuff we're learning today, potentially, to be able to give safety and measure safety in another way, not looking at the traditional leading indicators, but come up with something that's a live today measure of how your company thinks and feels. You know, for me, it's very hard to show. We talk about safety work, but it's hard to show what you're actually doing. You can be working behind the scenes, introducing a lot of stuff. You know, if you've got a low lagging indicator rate to start with, it's very hard to shift it from 0 to anything better. But you can be still making significant improvements to your safety culture, safety system, the way everything works. But there's no metric to show what you're doing. Perhaps there may be a new metric that shows that, you know, people's attitudes are changing. That, you know, 12 months ago we were here and now we're here. Even though our other metrics haven't shifted, we can tell our culture and everything has moved. So that's exciting. See where it goes. About 12 to 18 months. I first did the course probably with Andy 18 months ago. It took a couple of months, but we've been implementing it basically ever since. And we're certainly getting there. It's certainly working.